Hey out there, teachers and teacher friends, maybe even some parents have jumped on to hear this message from me today. So first of all, if you're seeing this means that you have purchased my first ebook, Maximize Mastery and Bear Fruit. So I'm making this video for those of you who are not really readers. You don't really like to read as much. Not saying you can't read, but you don't like to read as much. I'm making this video to share the ideas with you so that you can still kind of take advantage of this. And obviously you always have the ebook there for you whenever you want to reference it. So first of all, teaching can be challenging, especially in today's environment where we are dealing with COVID, right? We're dealing with those learning gaps that were caused during COVID. We're dealing with teacher shortages and having to cover classes and all of these demands, because the demands don't stop. Like, there's still things they want us to do from the school level, the district level, despite all of these other things that are going on. And I think because all of that is going on, that's the reason why I decided to create these type of resources. So you're going to be able to get more from me, not just this today's PD for the Soul ebook. This session or this video is related directly to our standard from the 8th grade, 8.G.2. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But there is no shortage of classroom worksheets, curriculum resources, and opinions floating around these internet streets. One thing that I haven't seen a lot of is instructional guidance that includes how to scaffold and accounts for the fact that some of us don't really have a deep understanding of the concepts. So guess what? If we don't understand the concepts deeply, how can we ensure that our students are going to? Right? And there's no shame, right? Because, it's a learning process for us all. It's a learning process for us all. Okay, so many of us, new and veteran alike, aren't always sure of how to make connections with the learning objectives in order to maximize the mastery, because that's what our principals are talking about. That's what our districts are talking about. We want these kids to master these standards. We want them to be proficient when they're taking their EOG. So for me, when I was in the classroom, I really focused on standards mastery versus test scores or grades, because that standards mastery, whether or not you were blue or green, let me know whether or not you got it, whether or not you were on grade level, whether or not there was something additional that I needed to do. So in this edition of PD for the Soul, we're going to focus on the North Carolina 8.G.2 standard, where they want us to use transformations to define congruence, okay? We're going to do this in 3 ways, and I'm not going to read verbatim what it says in the standard. I am going to give you the paraphrased version, but you have the ebook so you can read it, okay? So, like I said, I pulled that verbatim from the standard, but I wanted us to break it down to make sure that we understand what these words mean. So what do students need to do when we're talking about standard 8.G.2? They need to understand that rigid transformations produce congruent figures. In order for us to understand that, in order for our kids to understand that, they need to know, what does congruent mean? Okay. What do we talk about when we talk about these rigid transformations? And we're going to get to that. So the position and orientation may change of a figure, but the shape, its side lengths, and those angle measures, they remain the same. That's what makes those figures congruent. Any rigid transformation, meaning we're not changing any of those things as we move it, will take you from the pre-image where we start to its image where we end up, right? That second picture. Student needs to understand that although the points, the line segments, or the figures are moving in that coordinate plane or in the plane, or it may be even changing directions, the physical properties or characteristics are still the same. Okay. Now, you are going to see links in here where I'm giving you some access to different tools and stuff that I use in my classroom or used in my classroom, and making suggestions for my teachers to use in theirs to kind of help support those kids, because again, they're coming to us with gaps in their learning. So some of the important prerequisite skills that's important for the kids to understand before we get into 8.G.2, they got to master that coordinate plane. They need to be able to label those quadrants. They need to know which axis is which. They need to know what the origin is. They need to know which signs are represented in which quadrants. They need to be able to know how to plot those coordinates, the difference between clockwise versus counterclockwise, which could be a challenge because nobody's looking at analog watches anymore. Everything is digital. So we gotta bring that back up. They need to be proficient in adding and subtracting those integers. When we talk about those translations, we're going to get to that. And they need to be able to use, understand, and apply words like reflection, rotation, and translation. Okay, so again, I've inserted some links to Khan Academy. I am an ambassador. I've also inserted some links to quizzes. I'm a certified game changer. And I suggest using Khan Academy because there are those videos there. They can go in there and watch those videos. They can do the quizzes. They can do the unit tests. And these are things that you can assign them for your bell work, for your station work, for your small group time, or homework if you're a homework kind of teacher, you know? So again, since the idea is that you're going to be working ahead. And depending upon when you bought this, when you get access to this, it may be ahead or maybe a little bit behind. But for those of you who are working ahead, you can assign those learn tasks that I've linked in here before you start the unit to kind of help you get those kids where they need to be so you can be more successful as you're moving through. Be sure to explain to the students so that they understand why they are getting these additional assignments. Baby, I'm trying to get you on grade level. I'm trying to get you to proficient. Don't you want to be blue and green? Yes, I know you want to be blue and green. This is what it's going to take for us to be blue and green. Explain to them everything, every step of the way so they understand what it is that they're doing and you can get some buy-in and accountability for them. Okay, so I know for the curriculum that we use in the district that I support, Open Up Resources, and I am a teacher leader in residence for Open Up Resources, we have assessments all throughout our curriculum. If the curriculum that you're using does not have assessments built in, then you still need to get that data. You still need to know where your students are before you go into this unit, into this standard, okay? So if you don't have anything, use the quizzes. You can gamify it. They don't have to know that it's something that you're trying to collect data for. Gamify it. Just don't post the scores, okay? Because again, we're trying to check in and see where they are. But based on how they're doing, you'll figure out who needs additional support and who's really ready to learn, okay? So those who need additional support, go ahead and assign them that Khan Academy for them to do. And I've already highlighted the times that you can use for them to do it and get those babies started, okay? If there are any gaps in the understanding and the application of those skills that we mentioned, you're going to have challenges as you go through this unit, okay? And I know what you're thinking. Baby, COVID happened. COVID happened. We can't erase it. So there are all kinds of unfinished learners. Yes, I understand. I know that. You might also be thinking, how am I going to have time to teach grade level content and also teach these prerequisite skills? Yeah, I understand that too. But here's the good news now. You're not going to have to teach, well, not the whole class anyway. You're not going to have to teach the prerequisite skills. You can rely on, in some ways, the internet to help you do this, okay? Again, using that small group time, using that homework, using that bell ringer, using these pockets of time that you and your kids have access to help them work smarter, not harder, okay? Help them build their capacity. Whenever I started teaching, my mom had already been in education for over 20 years. So you know what I did? Listen to everything that she said. And one of the things that she told me was going to be really important is having a text-rich learning environment. That meant having things on the walls. Nobody wants to look around at these blank walls in these classrooms because you know the paint already ugly as it is. So now there's nothing up on the walls for me to look at. Nobody wants that. So, yeah, you need to get some text. You need to get some things on your wall, but not just anything. It needs to be things that are dealing with your content. And don't just post it and expect kids to just get it because that does not work. As you are hitting skills and concepts, create those anchor charts or purchase them, print them. Create those anchor charts, but frequently and consistently reference them so students are in a habit of looking at the walls. You need to create a culture in your classroom of utilizing your resources. The walls are a resource, y'all. As we're going through the school year, your resources are on the walls. I am encouraging you, okay? I'm nudging you to look up at those walls so you can get what it is that you need, all right? So I can't remember what the number is, but somebody once told me that someone needs to see something a certain number of times in order for them to commit it to memory. I don't remember the exact time. I've heard some people say 20 something. I heard somebody say not too long ago 30 something. Whatever it is, it ain't one time. So in order for us to provide them the opportunity to see something multiple times, we got to use the walls. Okay. There ain't enough whiteboards in the world. You got to use the walls. Okay. So now how do these prerequisite skills, how does this all relate? Well, that's where we're going to start. We're going to start by creating and buying these anchor charts to hang on our walls so that we can reference them daily and create that culture, right? A lot of us middle school teachers are struggling with this workload because, as I mentioned in the beginning, we got a lot going on. Okay, we have students who are ready to learn and we have students that need support. And those that need the support, y'all, the support that they need spans several grade levels. It's not just, oh, I'm teaching sixth grade. My child, the student I'm teaching is on fifth grade level. No, I might got some on third. I might got some on fourth. I might got some on fifth. Okay. I might even have some on seventh. So now I got to meet them where they are, even though I'm a sixth grade teacher. Right. So my advice to you as you're trying to figure out what to do with these kids that are on these various levels, keep your class simple, keep it structured, and keep it easily accessible for all of your stakeholders. And I know you're like, I thought this was PD for the soul about 8G2. Baby, I'm giving you a little bit of everything, okay? Because all of this is very relevant. Now, I'm not going to read this part because you could just look at it in the ebook, but I did give you a template for how you can set up your class and roll things out if you're on a 60-minute schedule or a 90-minute schedule. I beg you to look at this, okay? If you don't already have structure, if you don't already have a plan, please review that and get that plan in your life. It also gives you an idea of what to do with your small group and your stations, okay? With your small group, you want one group that you're going to be working with. And depending upon whether or not you have a 60 or 90-minute class period, you may be able to see two groups per class, or you may only be able to see one, okay? Whichever one that you have, you got to make sure that the other kids have something to do. Well, guess what they could be working on? Prerequisite skills. They could be working on remediation. So any grade level standards that they are not currently proficient in. Okay. You need to create a culture in your classroom of students being accountable for themselves. That means when they take an assessment, them seeing how well they are doing or not so well in these standards. And then you need to have something ready for them to practice. Yes, it takes time to put all this together. Yes, it does. But guess what? That investment on the front end is going to pay off because you're going to be prepared. You're going to be prepared when your kids need you. Okay. So again, I put a schedule in there for 60 minutes and 90 minutes. But this is why you came. You came to talk about these translations, these reflections, and the rotations. Okay. So at the beginning, I told you guys that it's going to be important for them to feel confident, for them to be proficient, adding and subtracting those integers. Okay, this is something that they learn about in 7th grade. But again, just because it was in the curriculum for 7th grade does not mean that the babies mastered it. We understand that. We know that. I get it. Let's move on. Okay, so a lot of people like to use tracing paper, and that's great. Okay. Students are given tracing paper to physically move pre-images to the image's location. But when that grid is gone and now time is of the essence and you trying to use that little white piece of paper, copy paper that they give you to trace it and move it, sometimes it might not be the best strategy. Okay, so in this case, the kids need to know how to do the calculation based on the rule that they're given. Okay, but let's be clear. We don't need to start with the calculation. The tracing paper is an ideal place to begin because it is concrete. Students can see the movement on the coordinate plane and make sense of what is happening. This is critical to their development and their progression to mastery. And that's what we want. You'll notice that most curriculum sources start in the grid. They don't give you rules to begin with. Most high quality curricular wants students to be able to derive their own rules based on the patterns that they notice. You know, math is all about patterns. So we're teaching these babies to be able to see those patterns for themselves. As your students are working with the tracing paper, ask them questions. Is there an operation that you could use to get the same result that you just got from sliding that paper around? Some students may be able to come up with this question on their own. They may be able to notice the patterns when they're looking at the coordinates from the pre-image to the coordinates for the image, right? If they don't, then this is when you can ask them. But this is also a great time to reintroduce, because it's not the first time, the number line and talk about movements on the axis, okay? Left, right, up, down, adding, subtraction. And what they suggest in terms of operation. Solidifying student understanding about movements in the plane isn't just important for this standard because it's going to show up again, okay? So if they get it now, because a lot of people start with geometry because it is an easily accessible domain. A lot of people start with geometry. So if they can get it now in something that is in this domain that is really visual, imagine how they're going to do later on. Yeah. All right. So reflections. Now, with the reflections, North Carolina Standard only focuses on reflections over the X and Y axis, okay? Now, Although I understand this simplifies it in terms of teaching the standard, I really do feel like we missed an opportunity here to connect to the equations of lines. But I understand why we did this. Because for our curriculum, the way that the units are set up, we start with geometry. Equations are kind of down the line a little bit. I think maybe unit 4, 3, 4, something like that. So the students might not be quite ready for it in the geometry unit. So I get it. But one thing that I often think about when I think about reflections are lines of symmetry. And this is not a new term. Students first learned about lines of symmetry in elementary school, okay? So they used to look at it as lines of symmetry within a shape, but we know that lines of symmetry can be like anywhere. And if we're able to recall those earlier learnings about two halves of an object, then they can relate that meaning to the reflections in the coordinate plane. What do I mean by that? If we have the y-axis, and let's say we have an image, we're going to just start with the coordinate, -3, 5. If we're reflecting it over the y-axis, okay, over the y-axis, what's going to change? The x value is going to change, okay? But if we're looking at both the pre-image and the image simultaneously, the pre-image is 3 units to the left of the y-axis, and the image is 3 units to the right of the y-axis. So that means the y-axis serves as the line of symmetry, right? Because those images are equidistant from the y-axis. The same thing is true if we're reflecting over the x-axis. Again, this is why I'm creating these resources, because I need for us to really think about how we can draw those connections from those earlier grade levels to really make this stuff make sense. I am not the type of teacher that wants kids to memorize a whole bunch of stuff, because we know their attention span is short. We know their memory is even shorter. So the more that we can make connections, and I can't remember the official term, but I think it's like the synapses or something in your brain. I could have totally made it up, but it's something in your brain that happens whenever you make connections. It's like something fires. So if we're able to do that repeatedly, instead of creating new stuff, connecting to old stuff, it's going to make it easy for this stuff to transfer to their long-term memory and not stay in their short-term memory. So again, you have the ebook, so you'll be able to read all of this. I just wanted to create a video so that you can, 1, see my face, but 2, you can kind of hear my words and hear my passion surrounding all of this. The rotations is probably one of my favorites, because I feel like the connection to the 7th grade material when they learned about the circles. They don't talk about this. I don't see anything mentioned about this in the standards. If you see something, just let me know. Maybe I completely overlooked it. And in the classroom that I've visited, that I've done instructional rounds in, I haven't seen the mention of it. But the same center of rotation that we talk about in 8th grade transformation is the same center of the circle that we talked about in 7th grade. The only difference is when we're talking about the rotations, we don't bring up the circle, which is crazy to me, right? Because that is such a huge connection that we could make. So why is this important? Well, because it helps students prove why the coordinates are the coordinates under a rotation. So let's think about that. I just want you to visualize for a moment that I have a right triangle that's in the quadrant. Let's say it's in quadrant 1, and it's going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. That means when it rotates, if I'm in quadrant 1 and I rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise, I'm going to end up, my image is going to be in quadrant 2. So we know that the signs, this is again something I told you we need to know from the beginning, the signs in quadrant 2 are negative, positive, right? All right, boom. So think about this. I got a right triangle. Now, I know in 6th grade, they tell you that your base can be any side of the triangle and the height is going to be perpendicular to it. But for the sake of this PD, I want you to think about the base as the horizontal line, just like we do in real life, and the height as the vertical line. Well, when I rotate that right triangle 90 degrees, guess what's going to happen? The base and the height are going to switch places. So now the base is the height and the height is the base. Imagine the aha moment that your children are going to have when they see that and they make that connection. Not when you just say, okay, memorize this, y'all. When we rotate 90 degrees, it's going to be negative YX. No, when they see it. And then each of the vertices on this right triangle, when it rotates, is on the outside of a circle. It's on the outside of a circle. Y'all, it's so good. It's so good. And I want to continue having these conversations. I'm definitely going to continue to create these resources because my goal is that you're going to leave, you're going to close this book, you're going to close out this web page, your browser, whatever, feeling bigger, bolder, and more prepared to teach this to your kids with clarity. Okay. So as you're reading this, as you're going through this, if you have questions, please feel free to email me. The email is obviously going to be within this ebook, but you can also come back to the website and drop me a line as well. You can follow me on social media. You can tweet me on Twitter. Whatever it is that you need to do to get in contact with me, baby, get in contact with me, because I love talking about math, okay? But I really feel like that when we dig deep and we really think about these connections to prior grade levels and we really emphasize that vertical alignment, all we do, we are maximizing our students' mastery. Like, we are setting them up for success. Who would want to do that? All right, until next time, thank you guys so much for supporting Bear Fruit Education. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to make it do what it do, and we're going to bear fruit. Until next time.